Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Dr. Jessica Green, and I serve on the Chamber's Board of Directors and also Vice Chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. Our council's mission is to promote growth and enhance awareness about the value of creating diverse and inclusive businesses in our community. For the third year, we are delighted to present our Evolve Education Series, sponsored by our friends at TD Bank. Thank you all for being here today. And now, please welcome Brian Culp, Retail Market Manager for TD Bank, to introduce our presenters for today's class. Also, those of you who are watching via Facebook, please let us know who you are so we can make sure that you receive your continuing education credit.
And good morning.
Mr. Culp. Thank you.
Brian, you can go ahead when you're ready.
I don't think so.
Brian, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, go ahead. I'm so sorry. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's great to join you virtually today. I'm Brian Culp, the Retail Market Manager for TD Bank, overseeing the Carolina Coast region. TD Bank is very proud to once again serve as the presenting sponsor of Evolve for this third year. I'm sure I can speak for the entire group when I say that I'm thrilled with the conversations and work that has come from these Evolve sessions. Diversity and inclusion are deeply embedded in everything we do with TD Bank, and it makes us a stronger organization for our colleagues, customers, and communities. We can't provide the service, convenience, and advise our valued customers who rely on us without authentically engaging and supporting the larger Myrtle Beach community where we live and work. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers. First, we have Becky Large, Executive Director of Champion Autism Network. Becky Large is mom to a son with functioning autism, creator and executive director of Champion Autism Network, and an advocate for people living with autism. Her vision is to create a world where all people living with autism can live, work, and play without judgment, guilt, or worry. Next, we have Greg Rosen. Rosen is a high-functioning autistic with the highest rank in Boy Scouts of America. He works at Empower Retirement Corporation, which is the second largest company in financial services, and is working on his MBA at Bay Path University. In his spare time, he serves as a national policy advisor for the Scouting program and is active in his local church. Next, we have Frank Espinal, owner of Ship On Site. Frank and his family moved to the Grand Trans in 2006 and began a new future that was built around the community. He worked as a small business consultant prior to opening Ship On Site in Surfside Beach in 2007. He enjoys serving his community and charitable foundations. He serves on local animal shelters, Meals on Wheels in Horry County, and amongst other not-for-profits in the area. Last but certainly not least, we have Lara Ceisel, Executive Director of Barbara Stone Foundation. And Lara is the Executive Director of the Barbara Stone Foundation and serves as the Director to Greenville Can, Collaborative Action Network. The Foundation's signature initiative. Since moving to Greenville in 2010, she's worked with Greenville County Rec as Area Director of Special Olympics Greenville, Administrator for Camp Spearhead, and Supervisor to Spearhead's Camp Worker Program. Please help me in welcoming our guest speakers.
Good morning, everybody. As he said, I'm Becky Large with Champion Autism Network, and I'm really pleased to be joined, having Greg and Frank and Lara join us in this panel discussion. So just a couple things. We're probably going to be taking breaks around every 30 minutes for Greg to have a few minutes just to kind of like decompress. You can ask questions throughout if you're not comfortable doing it verbally and you want to write them down for a little bit of anonymity. You feel free to do that. I will be reading them off. And what I'm going to do is I have like a series of questions that I've kind of developed in my pea brain, and you guys might have some as well.
In the room, we cannot hear you. You're on mute. Should be good now.
Okay,
Hear us now?
sorry. Thank you. I was just saying that we're probably going to be taking breaks every 30 minutes or so for Greg to be able to decompress a little bit. If you have questions, ask away. And I have a series of questions that I've shared with Lara and Frank. When I ask the question, I'm gonna ask Greg to respond, and then Frank is an employer, and then Lara has developed a cohort program with a hospitality group in the Greenville area, and so I want to get her perspective on that as well. And I'm hoping that we all learn something today and share. So first, Greg, did you want to just talk? The one thing that I would like everybody to do is to watch this video. Can we get the video up real quick? There are commands, and we're going to ask you to try and participate along with this. If you have a seizure disorder, you might want to just close your eyes, but we do ask that you try and participate.
Maybe after this. Follow the dots with your eyes. What color do you see on the screen?
Keep clapping.
Keep clapping. Stay in time.
Start from the end in the alphabet.
Stay in time. Don't slow down.
What color is on screen?
Keep clapping. Stay in time. Don't slow down. Follow
That's
the
hard.
dots with your eyes. Follow the dots with your eyes.
Start over on the alphabet.
Faster.
I was like, oh, happy hour.
Keep clapping. Stay in time. Don't slow down.
That's a simulation that we created, and throughout our training programs, when we were doing them live and on site, we would try and create some sort of, insanity for people to incite anxiety, to try and simulate maybe what somebody with autism might experience through the day. So when we transferred everything to online, we created this simulation, and then we got the nod from Greg Rosen.
I must say, that is the most realistic portrayal of what a meltdown is really like, with all the many different information getting put into our brains, and then eventually it just, you like completely lose it. So
I just wanted to share that with you. And then I wanted you to take on your tables, there's one copy of Greg's resume. And just kind of, can you just tell us a little, like, I know that you had said that you were nonverbal till you were about 3.5.
yes.
The other thing that I found really impressive about Greg is that he is so articulate and educated, and he's done many things that neurotypical or regular people would never even consider, right? He went through the Boy Scout program, became an Eagle Scout, and then the Arrow, Order of the Arrow.
Is the scouting program has what is called the National Honor Society, which is the Order of the Arrow, and you have to be elected into it. And then they have a series of honors, which is usually bestowed based on how much service you're able to give to your community and to your lodge and to your nation. There's Ordeal, Brotherhood, and Vigil. Vigil is the top honor, which only 2% of arrowmen can get. And I was one of the very lucky ones who got Vigil. So I guess I must have done
Incredible,
something right.
So on top of that, he was also an EMT, which, you can only imagine. I couldn't do it, handle that kind of stress. So that's impressive. He is a college graduate and traveled to Wales to get his master's degree in history.
Yeah.
And now he's employed at Empower and going for his MBA. So when you look at this resume, this is probably somebody that you're like, wow, this is amazing. But there's been challenges, right? You've been at Empower 3 years, and how old are you?
Well, a little bit more than 1 year.
Oh,
Good.
sorry. Well, it was another corporation before.
Yes.
So, and then how old are you?
I am 35.
Okay. So as far as the challenges go and what you have faced throughout the course of your life and your professional career with all your education and fabulous credentials and volunteer work, what is it that kept you from being employed up until just 3 years ago?
The two biggest obstacles by far was the application process that companies usually use to allow people to apply for a position. And in many cases, it'd be like many steps, and they'd ask all these various questions, and people like me on the spectrum would be like, what is it you're trying to ask for? And we just couldn't get a clear focus, and then they would immediately assume, oh, we can't do the job. But then the biggest obstacle is the interviewing process. Is then usually the way how companies would do the interview, they would have this heavy emphasis on social questions, and people like yours truly struggle with that immensely. Like, for instance, when somebody from like a human resources department, they would immediately like identify themselves, and it would be like, okay. And then it'd be like, and then they would dive right into the interview, and then they would start asking questions like, what is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And people like us are like, what exactly are you talking about? And then we would like freeze up. And in many cases, we would have a meltdown, and then they would be like, oh, can't do the job. And then what I have been working on, and then I've been working with other companies up in Massachusetts, is to have what we call a alternative style of interview. So instead of all the social questions and all these other items that weed us out, have what we call more of like a technical interview. And then it would start out with the very important 4 to 5 minute icebreaker. So that way we can be able to speak with whoever it is in HR for a few minutes, and then we can have that very important transition. So then we can be able to program our minds to become much better at it. And then we can be able to build it out and go and, in effect, what can we bring to the company? And it's much more effective.
Wonderful. So as an employer, you're employing people with autism, and how have you, with your knowledge of autism, like altered, or like, how do you overcome this challenge, or kind of what Greg's talking about?
Yes, in fact, although we're relatively new in the being involved with the autism spectrum employees and such, we consider ourselves veterans in hiring disability, individuals with disability. So a lot of similarities and such, but to Greg's point, it's really understanding the skill sets the employee has up front. Okay.
So how do you make that determination, or how's that been done up until now? Because I don't know that anybody's a veteran these days.
No, and it's a very good question, because although I have a nephew who's autistic, I wasn't in his upbringing, so it was kind of I knew about it. I knew it was there. I knew a bit about the different support groups that were out there and all. But as an employer, I looked at it as an opportunity that came through with the recent labor shortages. Okay, and that's real key, because there isn't an industry right now that isn't dealing with that issue. Okay, so and it just so happens that a friend of mine who's part of the SOS organization here in Myrtle Beach, she and I were just talking, and she just happened to mention, and the light bulb went on, and I said, you know what, this could work. And it was a matter of understanding my operations and the skill sets that I needed to complete certain aspects of the operations. So finding an individual who knows a wide variety of or has a wide variety of skill sets is hard to find to begin with, but you're basically filling in niches in your operation. And so I explored that, and took the opportunity to interview a candidate whose mom sits right here. And actually, in the interviewing process, again, not having the education in training with autistic individuals, I actually interviewed his mom, okay, and said, you know, this is what I'm looking for, and how does this, you know, how would this be a good match for him? You know, would this work? And we took it to the second level, and that was bringing him to the shipping center and giving him a tour and showing him, you know, where he would work, and, you know, what do you think of it? It's pretty much an aspect of, you know, getting him comfortable with the environment. And so those two pieces really is what made my decision easy, just to bring him on board. And then, of course, there's the training, which, you know, you and I had talked about for the employer and the employees, because I wanted to make sure my employees understood, you know, what it is and how it is that the environment's going to change and working with an autistic individual in our midst.
Awesome. Lara, so you're on mute. If you want to mute yourself. And how do you deal, you know, like, so you heard about Greg and the challenges of the interview process and kind of how Frank's handling it with the help of SOS Cares. I'm going to have you guys chime in a minute. And how do you handle that? Tell us a little bit about your program and what you're doing out in Greenville.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. This is a great opportunity. On behalf of the Barbara Stone Foundation, we're really excited. And we're really also excited about this new partnership that we've created and developed, as well as our UP initiative, which stands for Upward Professionals. Basically, the UP initiative is a partnership with a local hotel group and their hospitality management company to employ 8 individuals with disabilities, broad spectrum of disabilities, not specifically autism, but certainly autism as well. And our first 3 candidates and participants in the program are individuals with high functioning autism. We've also hired Hospitality America has hired 1 intern to work at a higher level professional position as a revenue analyst. And after his participation in the program for 1 year, he will be full-time employed with Hospitality America as an employee, not as an intern. And really, one of the key components of our initiative is to hire a job liaison to work as a job coach, yes, but also as really that connector between the employers and the employee, as well as any stakeholders involved. So any advocates for that employee, and to create kind of this seamless communication channel between all parties to ensure really success, and to be proactive in identifying any issues that might come up and implementing solutions. So we're really fortunate. The companies that we work with, the Windsor Orchard Hotel Group and Hospitality America, really heard us when we asked and told them some of the barriers to employment for people with disabilities, starting with the recruiting process, and then of course the application and interview process. They have really responded receptively to the things that the accommodations that we asked for. So everything from being able to be comfortable in the environment, visit the site prior to an interview, to providing examples of interview questions, to allowing our candidates and applicants to create a video of maybe them practicing the job or telling a little bit about themselves so that we can remove that social barrier to the interview process, and allowing the job coach or job liaison to act sort of as that connector prior to that they're comfortable with having the job liaison attend interviews as well, but we do want to kind of avoid creating a codependency there. And I think just thinking outside of the box in terms of what an applicant might benefit from, that doesn't necessarily preclude them from doing their job, but that can highlight their skills and and their strength in terms of interviewing and preparing for that interview.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that we're hoping to do is that we have a special relationship with our businesses who are already trained and aware through our training program. And so with the online on-demand modules, we have survey questions that everybody has to answer pre and post of the same questions, you know, just kind of try and measure the efficacy of the program, justify our existence basically. And so at the end though, there's 3 questions asking based on what you've learned, you know, would you be willing to work with somebody with autism? Based on what you've learned, are there job tasks and functions that you think somebody with autism could perform? And based on that, would you be willing to mentor or coach them? It seems to me, and I'm sure that Lara and SOS Cares, who's in attendance here, can attest to the fact that, you know, kind of the job coaching programs and cohort programs that people are developing are like a gauntlet of, you know, because we've got employers who want to employ people, we've got autism, you know, autistic people who want to work. But if you're relying heavily on the organizations and job coaches, there's a limited number of people. There's just not enough people to serve. So if we have, you know, employees who have raised their hands at these trained businesses already, we can go back to them and say, hey, can we give this a go? So that's one of the things we're trying to test out right now. But one of the things we're going to, you know, a couple of things we're going to talk about is the challenges to that, because there's a lot to it. So based on what you guys have heard from SOS Cares, you know, and the cohort program and everything, like where have your biggest challenges been, or, you know, like with the interview process and all that kind of type thing, what are you doing? Similar things, I'm guessing. Is there anything else that you would want to share about what you've had successes with?
Yeah, I think everything.
Lara, that's okay.
Lara said was awesome, and I'm so glad to see Frank, because I did my own personal follow along with Frank when he reached out to us, and he was very welcoming and was very interested in taking on some people on the spectrum. But we SOS, like we will start out with our waiver clients, like or non-waiver, we do a pre-employment class. And so where we will practice interviews and we will practice applications and anything job related, how to leave a job, how to get along with your coworkers, how,
Right.
you know, if you need a break, please advocate. I need a 5-minute break. I need to take a walk. That kind of thing. And then follow along, I think, is a great idea with the potential applicant to do a follow along first, let them meet the staff, let them look at the job, the tasks that they will be doing.
Mhm.
And then I just wrote a couple of notes.
Okay.
And then we will do like a VOC assessment. Where are your interests?
Right.
Where do you want to thrive?
Because it really depends on the interest and like where
Right.
that lies.
Where do you want to thrive? And then what is your skill set? And then, you know, if it's just basic skills, can we build on those
Right.
eventually? So, and then the job for job coaching, I hope that's going well with your employee. You know, our goal is to get in there and train the staff, help the staff out,
Mhm.
understand.
Right.
This is what it's going to look like.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're going to need a break. Sometimes they're going to need to walk away.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
for that-
sure.
for that. I
Oh, I
appreciate
could keep
that.
talking, sorry.
No, that's okay. Me too. No, I'm the same way. I'm like, I'm just going to vomit all over you. And so I'm really trying not to do that.
Okay. sorry.
So Greg, based on, you know, what you learned or what you've heard and your experience though, like there was a series of events that eventually led you to the opportunity
Mhm.
to gain employment at the company that is now Empower.
Yes.
And so do you want to talk a little bit about the accommodations that you need at your job, and, you know, kind of how you tripped into this? Well, I don't want to say tripped into, but it was a series of events and networking that led you to this opportunity. So what are you doing at Empower now?
Well, I am a project coordinator. So I help to run a lot of the budgets for not just my division, but I help to do a lot of the finances for a few of the other divisions within the company. And then also I work with procurement to help with their supplier diversity program. And then also I work with a few of the other divisions as well. Is originally what had happened when I did get the job at Mass Mutual, one person got hired to do my job. And I thought, oh boy, I'll get laid off before the first day. But then the person who was in charge of my division said, oh, don't you worry, there's plenty of stuff to do. So my role basically got turned into a jack of all trades kind of a thing. But then I really liked how they would throw a lot of these in-depth challenges with finance and programming and many of the other things that I really love at me. And when it comes to accommodations, it's like at first my manager that I had at Mass Mutual, Pam Callahan, did not have any kind of training at all on how to work with a person with autism. And then we got off to a rocky start. But then when I had a chance to really speak to her about like my strengths and the weaknesses, we were able to put together a very effective system. And then when I had mentioned her how penguins have a great relaxation feeling around me. So then she said, okay, you can bring in a couple penguins and bring in some like other puffin things to my workstation. So it helped me to be able to greatly reduce a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the other things there. So then I was able to do even better at my job. And then at Empower, now that I've been transferred to be able to go to Boston, they have a special feature there where you can have an elevated desk. The desk can get elevated about like 2 feet higher. And then what I have found out by having the elevated desk, I can do my job even better. Because in a lot of cases, when I'd be like sitting in a chair for most of the day, a lot of times I'd have to take frequent walk breaks. So I have to Empower has been very accommodating to me. And then they're also giving me the opportunity to work on the 100% Disability Equality Index score that is used by many corporations throughout our entire economy to judge how inclusive they are to people with a disability.
Frank, you talked about some accommodations that Greg's employer's done. What the employee that you have now, what kind of different accommodations are you offering to him?
Yeah, in his where he's at in the spectrum, and I'm still learning from him, by the way.
Sure.
And this is something
Every
that
day.
I have what I call lightning moments with him, and you know, and we'll both laugh sometimes at these moments because I get surprised, and I don't know that he knows that I'm surprised, but anyways, you know, we know we understand that the social interaction is a challenge for him. So we don't put him in an area where we have high traffic of customers walking in and out. And we learned that his skill sets are working with his hands. And so we have him packaging a lot of our packages, items that need to be packaged. And I dare to say that he's probably one of the best individuals that can tape a box, believe it or not. Because there's a way to tape a box that looks good, and there's a way that's functional. Well, he does both. It looks good and is functional, okay? So, but we do keep him in the back operations. He can see what's going on up front. So he feels comfortable there. And
then he works short stints of time,
Yes.
right? Like 2
Right.
hours a
correct,
day.
2 hours a day. And that was something that in the interviewing process I learned. And, you know, we learn to communicate with each other. And I dare say his name.
Yeah.
Okay. JJ, I'll look at him and I kind of read him and I'm like, how's the battery running, JJ? You know, he'll go like this to me. I'm like, good. So I look at the time and know that, you know, where he's kind of draining and give him a break. You know.
And Lara, and you're on mute. I just when you're talking to employers about the different accommodations, how do you learn about those and how do you communicate them to the employers?
So within our program, it's a pilot program. So all of our candidates are handpicked at this point. And each of those candidates, 3 as of right now, or 3 employees as of right now, have very different jobs. So one is a revenue analyst and works remotely, either either at home in his office, or he goes to the Hospitality America headquarters and has space there that they have kind of set aside for him, so that it is consistent and it is the space that he is comfortable in. They've been accommodating in that way. Our other employee is working the front desk, and they have made it, they've accommodated by providing shorter days, basically. So he works a 6-hour shift versus a 8, 10, or 12-hour shift. And he's also been connected to kind of an internal mentor at the hotel that he works at. So he can ask the questions and they kind of set him up for success in that way, and let him know that there's really no questions that he can't ask, and they do really well at preparing him for the day. Of course, working the front desk is a little bit different because it's an unpredictable environment, but they do really well in letting him know the busy times and using some of their information and their data that he responds really well to. And then I think for the breakfast attendant that is starting or just started recently, they also gave him the option to work part-time and kind of start on the slower days and work up to some busier times at the hotel. He also does really well when he has a very specific schedule that's been written out. A literal, this is when you'll be doing this task, and this is when we will be meeting. He does really well with that, and the hotel has embraced that and accommodated in that way.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions up until this point? Do you need a break?
Yeah, can I get a brief one?
Yes.
Can I ask back a question before we?
Can we let him go first? Go ahead.
Okay,
I thought you said you wanted to say something.
okay. Actually, no.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I know this is different for every employer, but a couple of times I've reached out to Frank and just warned him, JD didn't sleep, he's a mess today or whatever, and Frank has dealt with it beautifully. And we've also sometimes had to shift his schedule because he struggles with insomnia. I want to know from you, how much involvement do you want from a parent?
It's a very good question, and it's something that I feel pretty comfortable. And actually, when he had those moments where he wasn't himself, his usual self, we read that and we're like, okay, it's not a good day for JJ. And then when he had those days that were really not good, whether it was lack of sleep or whatever, I was very appreciative that you let me know that. And we were ready for it coming in. And you normally, we get into the, how are you doing, JJ, and all that, but we let him find his spot. And then we approached him as we needed and let him kind of, cool off or whatever it was that he needed to do to re-energize himself to get ready for that.
I call that flying under the radar.
Yes.
We're just gonna hover down here. So Lara, how much involvement do you want from the parents? Because I think part of this whole thing is getting people employed so that they reduce their dependency, or, they can be independent without their parents, where the parents can rest knowing that their kids have a job and can, pay for them, pay for themselves and live without them independently. How much involvement do you expect or want from the parents?
Yes, so our ultimate goal, right, is least restrictive environment and as much independence as an individual is looking for, right? So that's what we want to support. I Personally, my philosophy is however that needs to happen and it's a journey, right? We don't try not to put like fences around that or limitations to that, but really how can we work together to support that goal, that mission together? So we use that job liaison to connect all of the stakeholders, employer, employee, and parents or caregivers. So we do look at it as a spectrum, and that there will be an eventual maybe phase out or increase independence and less involvement with parents. But certainly from the get-go to help employers understand that some I hesitate to say behaviors, but some behaviors don't prevent somebody from completing a job. Helping an employer understand who a person is and what will help them sometimes only comes from the parents, because that individual may never have had that opportunity to connect or interact with an employer.
Gotcha.
If
Greg,
that makes sense.
just before we go to a quick break.
Mhm.
So, we heard about JJ and he's, woke up on the wrong side of the bed and things like, how do you handle, because you're independent and living on your own. And if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed or, do you communicate that to your team, or can they you've developed a relationship now with, they kind of know you, and how do you deal with that when you're not having a good day, like on the verge of meltdown?
Mel's what we use in the financial services industry, we use what we call like a check-in. So then my manager speaks to me like, okay, what is going good? What is not going so good, and ways how we can improve on that. So what I've been working with my manager on is working on when I have days like that. So what I have been able to find out to be effective is I would just need to go outside and go for like a little bit more of like a walk break. Or when we get back into the office, I would just need to go to like the break room and get like some more green tea and things like that. And then now that they had allowed me to be able to go to the people in Boston, and I've been able to speak to a lot of the people there. So I've gotten to know a lot of the people, so I can be able to teach them like how to best work with somebody like yours truly. So I definitely agree that communication is very important.
And that seems to be a bit of a challenge for some people with autism,
Oh, yes.
communicating that without, like verbal communication, which is what we're, used to.
Mhm.
But we can talk, do you want to say anything about that?
Oh, if I can, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Is also, and this has led me to some trouble in the past, I believe in being honest, is that, one thing that people like us struggle with immensely is understanding nonverbal communication. I know I've gotten a lot better at it, but I still struggle with that. Because like when I'm speaking to, let's say, Stephanie right there, and then we would talk back and forth about a couple of things, and then she would all of a sudden want to go do something else. And I'm like, did I say something to offend you? Or like, what's going on? Or, and like in some cases, like in the work environment, when they change the subject abruptly or something else like that, I immediately assume I did something wrong. But in other cases, some people are like, no, Greg, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just this topic is over. And so definitely like what I had learned from the HMEA autism cohort, which they had with other companies. And then I did not get accepted within that Dell program, but then they'd given me that training program to better understand the nonverbal communication, to be able to become better at it.
Great. Do you want a break?
Yeah, can I get a few minutes?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute break,